Thank you so much for attending our virtual junior college planning night. This is now, we've been doing the junior college planning night for years, but this is our second time doing it virtually like this. So, it's a format we've all grown accustomed to, and we've been making it work, and we still feel like we can deliver all the same information to parents. So again, thank you all for attending. Just in terms of the format for tonight, the counseling staff, we're each going to go over different topics in regard to the college search and selection process. Parents can certainly feel free to throw in questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as we kind of navigate through the night. And these are topics that over the years, we've modified them from year to year and added, adjusted things. And we kind of feel like these are the things that we really feel are really important to the college search and selection process. So I'm gonna begin. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna present my screen. Okay. So what you can see, hopefully everyone can see this. One thing we wanted to make sure, we had a blog for years. We've transitioned to a new website. So I just wanted to quickly show parents Burlington Public Schools. You'll go to schools and then click on Burlington High School. And then from there, you can locate the counseling department. We do have a wealth of information on the page. I suggest that you check it out when you get a chance. We put all our events on there that we have throughout the course of the school year. Over on the right-hand side, we have some very helpful tabs for students and parents to check out. We encourage you to take a look at that. There's a lot of links to different topics that you can kind of research and look through a little bit further. So we did want to make sure we pointed that out. The counseling staff, many parents and students on the call know the names of the counselors, but we like to make sure, in this slideshow will be shared with everyone after, but names of counselors, hopefully you know who your son or daughter's counselor is. We also have two secretaries in our office, Anisha Sheikh and Teresa Kavanaugh, and Teresa handles all the transcripts. So you'll hear more about transcripts tonight, but she handles making sure colleges, scholarship organizations all receive copies of the transcript. And again, that's an academic record, the transcript, and you're going to hear more about what exactly that is in a couple of slides. So as a counseling department too, we like to remind families that we do follow something called a developmental model. And this is essentially the things that we as a department try to do each year with students. Just like similar to a teacher teaching a curriculum in a classroom, we have goals and expectations that we try to strive for each year. And as you probably know, this year the big chunk, if not most of the year, is going to be around post-secondary exploration, college planning. And fortunately, the schedule has changed for juniors. They have something called a directed study, and the counselors are taking full advantage of that time to meet with juniors to start this process. Many counselors have already had a couple of meetings already. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand this over to Ms. Rogers. If you want, I can just put the slide up for you, Ms. Rogers, so you're able to speak. Will that work for you?
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Adebato. All right. Okay, I think just one more over, Mr. Adebato, unless my camera. Okay, yeah, thought my computer was on delay. All right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Rogers. I am a school adjustment counselor here at BHS, and I live in the counseling department with all of the wonderful counseling staff. And a little bit of a departure from the topic of college planning, but still important and relevant. We just wanted to make a quick pitch for a new service that we have started this year. And to any students on the call, I know some of you have participated in this, some of you have not, and we are grateful for all those who have expressed some interest. So let me just explain what it is real quick. It is essentially small group counseling in which we are hoping to help students learn skills and strategies to manage stress, anxiety, and low mood, which we know is always common in these years and at a higher level than previously as well. Groups are made up of 6 to 8 students. We try to organize by grade level, so 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th grade students. And it's co-facilitated by myself and one of our school counselors. So far, they've been running over the course of 7 weeks, and they meet once a week for the length of a class, so around an hour. Due to our rotating schedule, one benefit of that is that students will not miss the same classes, the same class for each of those 7 weeks because of the rotating schedule. Teachers are always alerted so that no one is penalized for being in that group during class time. They are completely voluntary. We know that everyone is at different stages of comfort when it comes to meeting with a group to learn strategies around stress and anxiety. We make it really as comfortable a space as possible. We've heard a lot of positive feedback from students this year that have been involved. However, again, it is voluntary and it does require a signed permission slip by the student, and if the student is under 18, then also a parent or guardian. So far, we've had 4 groups, and our next 2 groups we were hoping to get started this month. So a little ambitious, but potentially next week, if not the week after break. And last but not least, if you have any questions, if you have any interest, you want to learn more, you just want to come and say hi, please come see any of your school counselors and or myself. As I said, I'm in the same department with everyone. So that is that. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Now we're going to pass it over to Mrs. Smith. I'm going to stop presenting, and she is going to take over the show.
Great. That sounds a little intimidating when you say it that way. Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see it okay?
Yep, I think you just got to present screen. There you go. Perfect.
Am I okay now? Great. So, college stuff and career stuff. So, again, I'm Mrs. Smith, and it's so nice to see the families of so many of my students. And I really enjoy this part about my job because for me, it's super exciting thinking about all the possibilities and what you can be. And just so many options are available now, but it's intimidating. We're starting to meet with juniors, and they're excited on one hand, but already a little overwhelmed. This year is really all about defining your future plans. What are your career interests? Kind of play with that. I tell my juniors that you're juniors. You're 16, 17 years old, and there's so many careers out there that you don't even know about. So start to understand what different careers are there. Do searches, talk to people. What does this career mean? What does that career mean? Sometimes getting to know different careers means getting on various college websites and just saying, this major sounds interesting. What does this mean? What can I do with it? So kind of teasing all those things out. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? I might like to play the piano, and I've played the piano for many years, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want to go into the career, but maybe I want a school that has that. The other thing is, as you start to get to know careers, what do they require? Do they require a 2-year degree? Do they require a 4-year degree? Do they require a technical program? So what our jobs are to help your kids figure out what their options are and how they can plan so that by the time they graduate from high school, they'll have a plan after high school. And if that changes, they'll at least know the resources that they can use to redefine their plans down the road. Okay. So what are the responsibilities for juniors? Previously, we used Naviance. Now our platform is Score. Naviance was a little not very user-friendly, but this year's kind of a blessing in the sense that you still have access to both the old Naviance, if you got familiar with that, as well as SCORE. But SCORE is what we'll be using from this class, the 2023 class, to send information to colleges. So at some point, we do need to get used to SCORE. Check emails. They'll have reminders. They'll have invites to different one-on-one meetings with their counselors. All the counselors also have Google Classroom. They're organized to present a lot of information for you and your child to figure out what needs to be done or how to go about doing it. So lots of resources on the classroom. It's expected that counselors will not be the only ones in charge of this college process. This is your child's opportunity to start taking initiative, self-advocate, start making individual meetings. We are here to help, but this isn't all on us either. They will be expected to make individual meetings, and when we schedule meetings for them, we expect them to come also. With the rotating schedule, we're already finding our schedules are getting very, very full. So make these meetings. And take the time to research your options. Do I want to go far? Do I want to stay closer? What are my options? And develop this list of colleges, universities, programs where you can get how you can get to what your goals are. So again, SCORE that's the platform that teachers, when they write the letters of recommendation, and when we write letters of recommendation for your student, all of that gets uploaded to SCORE, and then we send all of that. We go on to SCORE and use that to send everything to colleges. It's also a great resource. We're going to show you a little bit today on how to research colleges or compare them. And by using some of the resources they have, you can determine whether a school is a reach school, a realistic, or a safety. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And they have a really good career assessment tool, and they also have great career research resources where you can look up not only different careers, but also ones that might be similar. And so I would encourage you to take advantage of SCORE in that also. And parents can also have access to this account. Okay, college research. The main things that you want to use to narrow down your list of colleges is majors. What are you looking to study? And we realize that can change a lot. I consistently tell my students that except for certain majors, you really can start out undecided, except for things like architecture, nursing, a major physical therapy program. Things like that are direct entry. So things like that, you have to know what you're going to study right away. But many others, you're looking for things that you might be interested in taking. Not only maybe you would like to study biology, but it would be great to also take a couple classes in business. So majors, location. Do you want to be a couple hours away? Would you like to stay maybe an hour away? Maybe live at home or not live at home? Keep in mind, if you're going further away, like my oldest son goes to college in North Carolina, and it's a 2-hour flight from Boston to Raleigh. However, to drive would be a lot further. So sometimes if you're going a little further away, how close are you to the airport? How accessible would that be? Can you do a direct flight? Things to consider. How often is your child going to need to come home? Do we need to ease into this, or they already show you that they're very independent? Size. Smaller schools are more intimate. If relationships are important, if your child learns better by getting to know their professors, that's good to know when you're looking at a smaller school versus a larger school where it's more intimate. Cost. We encourage students to not limit their college search just based on cost, but this does need to be a consideration. Public schools, the UMasses, for example, or the Massachusetts state universities like the Framingham, the Salems, their initial cost is lower, However, private schools are more expensive, but they also have more money to give. So many families have found that often when things come out in the wash, there's often sometimes not a huge difference, but keep them both in mind. Housing, things to look at. Is that a big deal for your family? Does your child want to live at home? Another thing to consider is how many years is housing guaranteed? Another is athletics. Your child may not play athletics. If they play athletics, obviously that would be a big factor in your research, but also maybe it would be fun in college to go to a school that has these big time sports or big time football games. And maybe for the college experience, life is about more than just the academics. Think about when you're looking at schools, what can help you become the best person you can be? What environment will help you really maximize your potential? Where are you going to take the most advantage of the resources available to you? Special programs is another one. Maybe it would be great to be part of a TV station, a radio station, newspaper, marching band, different things like that. Here are some ideas, or here are some resources for the college search. SCORE, which we mentioned. Also, social media and other search-related sites like Instagram, Niche Unigo, Campus Reel, CapEx, Twitter, different things like that. Google, I have found very often, I have done searches through different things like some of the others on this Big Future, which is through the SAT website, or others through the actstudent.org. But I found that very often I go to Google and I've said, schools that have architecture, just to see if there's anything I've missed, colleges that have whatever, or what do I need to do to become an architect? Different things like that will help tease out what direction you want to go, or maybe what you need to be looking for. Virtual college fairs are a great resource where you can go to a website and it's a time to actually have a time to virtually discuss with a college representative some of the things. They might do a little presentation, and then you have a time to ask questions one-on-one with the representative from that school. Campus visits. There is nothing, I can't overestimate how important it is to actually get your feet onto a campus. What does it feel like to be at a big school? What does it feel like to be at a smaller school? What feels more right? Here's different ways to visit a campus. Many colleges are open in person for in-person tours. You go to the website, you sign up through their admissions website, but through COVID, because so many of the in-person stuff was canceled, now almost every school has some sort of virtual tour, online something. Also, college open houses. I haven't heard of too many of those yet, but I know that they are hoping for more to come. College open houses are kind of like a tour plus. It's where you can actually, you go on a tour, but you also have opportunities to go to a workshop on financial aid, a workshop on housing opportunities, on study abroad, on just parent issues and financial aid and different things like that. Most of these things you can find by going to the admissions websites. Self-directed tours. You could also go to get a map and walk around, see what you're doing. But even if you don't want to do anything official, I would say just looking at the schools around and getting a sense for going into Boston, visiting some of the schools outside, and just seeing, even if you're not necessarily interested in the school, just getting a sense for what bigger or smaller or city or not, getting a sense for what that feels like so you can tease out what's right for you. One thing I did want to mention is some colleges have a lot of COVID restrictions. So if you are going expecting a tour, make sure you know what their rules are for when you go further. And I apologize. I have a 3-year-old golden retriever, so she's banging around, clunking here and there and squeaking toys. So I apologize if you keep hearing that. Okay. Likelihood of acceptance. When we talk about reach, realistic safety, What we mean is if you have a certain grade point average, what are the likelihood that you're going to be able to get in? So realistic means you meet the requirements for admission. It's a good chance that you will get into that school. Safety means it's a school where your grade point average is typically higher than the requirements for admission. So you are very, very likely to get in. The counselors, when we recommend schools, we expect that to be a good fallback school. Reach. Reach is tricky because it might be a realistic school for you to look at. For example, your grade point average might be at 4.2. However, and the average acceptance or the average GPA accepted student at UMass Amherst might be a 3.9 or so. So you might be higher than that. However, you might be looking at a really, really competitive major, nursing, computer science, business, different ones that are super hard to get into. Or a reach school for everyone might be schools that are super hard to get into. Brandeis, BU is a hard school to get into. Harvard, those are schools that have such a very low percentage of overall acceptances. Just their reach is for everybody. We just can't predict. It might be realistic for you to look at. You're qualified, but it's just so hard for anybody to get in. One thing that we encourage all students, and we really push that all students have at least one or two financial safety schools, meaning it's a school that not only you can get into, but you can also afford. We want to make sure that finances are a reality, and we have to take that into consideration. When you're compiling this list, we typically say 6 to 8 schools is a good number, but we also have students who want to go to UMass Lowell or Salem and they meet the standards. We know that they'll get in, they can afford it. And some students only apply to a few, and then others apply to many more because of the whole reach factor. I would say one thing about safety schools too, keep in mind that can be a great resource for the financial safety. But when you're looking at these schools, we tell all students, you need to be happy with every school on this list. If you throw a safety school in there just as a backup and the way finances play out, you have to lean towards a safety school. You need to make sure you pick those safety schools wisely. Scattergram. On SCORE, here is the kind of idea how you can tell whether or not a school is going to be a safety or not. So when you look at this, see this top, it has the grade point average, and this is based on accepted students, or this is based on Burlington High School students who have applied to, for example, NYU. So looking at this, you try to figure out, based on the SAT here on the left and the ACT scores on the right, what might that look like? So it looks like the green are the accepted, blue are waitlisted, and we can see the not accepted it looks like SATs, ACT scores are a big deal at that school. So check out the scattergrams. Same thing with Framingham State. When you're looking at these, sometimes you see an odd one, like for example, this here not accepted. Sometimes you see things like that in a school that you would otherwise say, how did that person not get accepted? And sometimes on the counselor end, we can see it was because it was a very competitive program. And let's see, I think, who's taking over next?
I am.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, let me just shift to presenting my screen. Hi, everyone. Go here. Okay, and I'll get into present mode also. There we go. All right, so just to cover, first of all, because our four-year public universities are extremely popular with many of our students, we think it's important for you to know just what are the criteria that they require as a minimum. So fortunately, all these requirements you see here as minimum requirements for these universities are built right into our graduation requirements for Burlington High School. So we set students up for the ability to at least meet the minimum to be accepted by having 4 years of English, 4 years of math, which has to go up to at least Algebra 2. They get more than 2 years of social studies. They all do have the 3 years of lab-based science because all of our science courses are lab-based. And we also do require those two years of the same world language. So that is the minimum. It doesn't guarantee acceptance into those colleges, but it is what they expect as a minimum. For more competitive colleges, they like to see students challenging themselves, although I'll say a little bit more about challenging themselves within reason. But if they're able to be successful, they might like to see that they have done well in at least maybe one AP course or dual enrollment course, or having at least some honors courses. They also like to see usually more than just Algebra 2 for math. So shooting, if possible, for at least pre-calculus or calculus by senior year. They also really like to see, even though our minimum requirements too are just, for example, the 2 years of world language or 3 years of science and history, those most competitive colleges really prefer to see students sticking with every core subject throughout all 4 years of high school. And part of that would be built into also during senior year, just making sure that they're continuing to take challenging courses and not sort of looking like they just slacked off that year. Certain programs like engineering or music may also require more specific courses. So like Ms. Smith said in the beginning, it is important just as students are forming their lists of colleges they're interested in, to go directly to those websites to see what those specific requirements might be. Shifting gears for a moment, we are about to go into, speaking of senior year courses, the process once again for students to start picking those courses for next year. So we'll be doing our overview assemblies on March 1st. We will meet with all the juniors in groups. And then the following 2 weeks, we're actually trying out a new process this year where we want to make sure that we're able to meet with every student individually. So we're going to be having the juniors history classes come down to the counseling department for at least one period during those 2 weeks, so that each student will have a chance to check in with their counselor and review their plans for their courses next year. In the meantime, though, they should definitely be speaking with their teachers about what are those appropriate courses and levels that they would recommend for next year. In what I had said about challenging courses before, just to expand upon, they should challenge themselves, but only to the point where they're able to remain successful. So they're not going to help themselves in the college process by taking challenging courses, but then getting D's in those courses, or even if they overdo it and they get mostly C's. Colleges really are hoping to see those A's and B's for the most part. So taking the most challenging courses you can while maintaining those grades would be the goal. And like I think I said probably just a minute ago too, they should definitely be looking at directly, if they have some colleges in mind, looking at the admissions sections of the websites for those colleges. And also SCORE allows them to explore what those requirements are as well. We have some, besides just traditional courses at the high school, for juniors and seniors, they do have the option to take some of their, what's the word I want to say, enrichment elective courses through virtual programs. So if there are subjects that we don't offer at the high school, like maybe a world language such as Chinese or Portuguese, or art history, or students I've had study veterinary topics, they can do those through a program that we have a connection with called Virtual High School. That's what VHS stands for. Or the other program we use is Edgenuity. So it wouldn't be to take the plain old English or math course that we do offer, but this is that opportunity to take something we don't offer. The second bullet is about we have an expanding number lately of courses that we offer at the high school. So these are just courses that they would take regularly, such as calculus or Latin or some of our computer science. And as you can see, many subjects covered there, where we have agreements through, mostly it's at Middlesex Community College with Latin, I believe it's UMass Boston. But the teachers have been, our high school teachers have been certified that they're covering the same content that would be covered at those colleges. So students have the option, as long as they meet the requirements, to, if they choose, pay a little bit extra to those colleges to receive some college credit. And then depending on the college they go to, that credit may apply differently. That's another thing to look into. And back to the state university system, these are all some of the profiles, symbols for what our state universities are. So it includes all the UMasses, as well as anything with state university in the name, like Bridgewater State or Framingham State. Besides those minimum high school subject requirements, in general, they have a cutoff where they prefer students whose GPA is a 3.0 or higher. That's a B average. If their website, not their website, if their GPA falls below that mark, it doesn't mean they absolutely can't be accepted. But I'll show you on the next slide, they have a sliding scale where they may need a higher test score to make up for having a lower GPA. Speaking of test scores, though, that has been very different these past couple years. So this year and last year, there were actually none of the colleges that our students apply to that required SATs or ACTs. Unfortunately, we just don't know yet what's going to happen for next year. Most of the colleges haven't made that announcement yet. BU, which is not one of our state colleges, they have announced already that they are still going to be test optional next year. We just are still waiting for those announcements from our state college system. If they do require test scores next year, this is the sliding scale that they normally use. So if that GPA is a 3.0 or higher, there is no minimum SAT score or ACT score that they need in order to be considered. However, if their GPA falls below that 3.0, these are the minimums that they would need to meet in order for their application to be considered. So as you can see, if it's in that higher range of 2.5 or higher, they would need around, the 1030 or higher on the SATs or a 20 on the ACT. But if it falls lower, the lower it goes, the higher that score needs to be to compensate for it. So with a 2.0 GPA, they would need at least a 1220 on the SAT in order for their application to be considered. And I think our slide didn't mention, but you might notice it doesn't go below 2.0, and that is because our state universities are not allowed to accept students with a GPA below a 2.0, meaning our four-year universities. However, our community colleges, those two-year universities, those are places that a student, regardless of GPA, can go as long as they have graduated. And our system, we have a special partnership, fortunately, between our community colleges and our four-year universities called the A to B, which stands for Associates to Bachelor's Degree, and the Commonwealth Commitment Program. So if a student starts out at a community college and plans to transfer to a four-year college, and that's very common to do, Middlesex Community College is probably our most popular of the community colleges that our students attend because it's nice and local and is a beautiful campus. Another really popular one, if they prefer a city setting instead of a suburb, is Bunker Hill in Boston. But if they start at any of our community colleges and they earn at least a 2.5 for the 2 years there, then they have a smooth path to transferring into any of our four-year public universities. They have dedicated advisors at the community colleges that will help students plan. If they have a goal in mind that they want to transfer to UMass Lowell for engineering or UMass Amherst for business, they would plan with that advisor the courses that they're taking at community college and make that plan smooth. If their GPA is a 3.0 or higher, so higher than 2.5, they also would receive a 10% discount on their tuition during their junior and senior year. So, and I said this to my students this week too, but just to clarify, if you do transfer from a community college to a four-year university, you don't start over again. So if you do 2 years at a community college, you transfer directly into junior year at the four-year college. And the two of our state university system that have more specific requirements are Mass Art and Mass Maritime, because they're less traditional schools. So that's just something to reach out to those more specifically if that's your plan. Okay, and it looks like now I believe we're at the next slide, which is actually Ms. Diozzi as part of the presentation. So I'm gonna turn it back over to her.
Okay. Is it sharing? Oh, here we go. So I'm going to talk about the, can you all see that? Someone give me a thumbs up. Oh, good. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the factors in the admissions process. And a lot of the things we're going to talk about are the things that students complete in advance. The application, believe it or not, is one of the last pieces of the puzzle because it doesn't become available till much later on in the year. Mrs. Leary will be talking about that a little bit later. But some of the things that admissions committees consider in the process are the transcript, which are the compilation of student grades, letters of recommendation from mainly teachers and the counselor. Sometimes they will want letters of recommendation from coaches or employers. Compilation of extracurricular activities, generally at least one college essay, possibly standardized tests. And for some colleges, they like to consider what's called demonstrated interest, which is how a student engages with the school and shows that they are interested. This is a sample of a transcript. It's as you can see, the student is Miss Minty. And over here on the right is the GPA. And then we have some identifying information about the student, their birthday, their day that they entered Burlington High, address, and the like.
Ms. Diozzi, you might just want to click slideshow on the top. Yep, just so everyone can see a little bit.
I have the slides with the fine print. And then we have the meat of the transcript, which is where we keep the grades. So as you can see, this is grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. The name of the class is listed, the level at which the student took the class, the grade he or she earned, and the credits that they earned. And you can see this student is an A student, but even when you look at their grades, there's an improvement even from A's and A minuses to A's and A pluses. So that is a really outstanding transcript. And then I don't really see an increase in rigor, although they did take 1 honors class freshman year, 2 sophomore year, 3 junior and senior year. So this is what every student's transcript looks like. And then we also list the classes that they will be taking senior year, including second semester electives. The bottom of the transcript explains the grading system and the levels, signed by the principal, technically. And then we have had in the past, it explains the GPA. We've also altered the transcripts over the last couple of years to reflect grading during COVID. So we do try to amend the transcript depending on the circumstances of the school. Attached to the transcript is a school profile. We do not have an example of the school profile, but you can actually see that on the website. And the school profile explains Burlington High School to each college admissions office. Now, Northeastern is going to be very familiar with Burlington High, but if a student applies to, say, Washington University in St. Louis, they're not going to be as familiar with our high school. So this helps tell them a little bit who we are, where we're located, how COVID might have impacted our schools, what's the community like? Burlington is there's a lot of tech in Burlington. What do we require for graduation? How many AP classes, for example, do we offer in our curriculum? What seniors have done and what they have accomplished, including SAT scores, GPAs, and range and weight of GPA. And actually, this specific class information would be specific to the class of this current senior class, and that would apply to the next. Is that right? I think I'm confusing myself. That would apply to next year. It just gives the colleges a ballpark of our standards. We also want to factor in that we are in COVID. We're in a COVID landscape in terms of some of the grading that happened when the kids were freshmen, and also with regard to standardized testing. So we are still, as Ms. Minty mentioned, waiting for colleges to determine if they are going to be test optional or require tests. I referenced Washington University in St. Louis because they're committed to being test optional for a few more years, as is Harvard. But a lot of colleges have not yet made up their mind, and you need to check individual websites for that information. And I also just want to point out there is a large consortium, it's not a consortium, but a large cluster of smaller colleges in this area that have been test optional for a very long time. Colleges like Assumption, Merrimack, St. Anselm. So being test optional is not necessarily new to a lot of these colleges. That said, we do encourage students to take an SAT. We'll talk about that a little bit in a future slide. And also, if a school is test optional, but you still want to send your scores, we only encourage you to send the scores if they're above the admitted score or the average score. They really need to be better than, not equal to. And we have been encouraging students to wait and see what their scores are before they send. So college admissions testing, we have both the SAT and the ACT. The SAT tends to be the more popular test among Burlington High students, but students are welcome to take the ACT. As I've referenced test optional schools, we also want to highlight this website, fairtest.org. They maintain, it's very constant, a list of all the colleges that are test optional or that might require tests, for example, a nursing program, but not for the college. And so that's a really great resource for checking information. Students have to register for the SAT or the ACT directly through the website. Last year, we did allow students to register through BHS, but that's because we were still hybrid. And you are expected to register directly with the testing organization, although you would register to take the test at Burlington High if it's the SAT. If it's the ACT, we don't offer it at our high school. For students for whom English is not their first language, they may need to take an additional test or even a test in lieu of the SAT called the TOEFL, the test of English as a foreign language, or the Duolingo English test, which is free. Oops, sorry. We want testing to be completed by January of senior year. Students are encouraged to take one test this spring and another one next fall, depending on their comfort level and the number of colleges that they're applying to that might require testing. For those of you who weren't aware, the SAT essay and subject tests have been eliminated. You may have heard in the news that the SAT is going digital and it will be shorter, but that unfortunately will not apply to the class of 2023. It begins in 2024. And any student in the federal free and reduced lunch program can speak to their counselor about getting a fee waiver for the SAT or ACT. Another component of the application is the activity list. The common application, which is a primary application, and again, Mrs. Leary is going to talk about that more, allows for 10 spots for activities. Often students have more than 10 activities, and so they want to create a more comprehensive list of activities. This is not to be confused with a resume. The job is not to get a goal. The goal is not to get a job. It's just a compilation of everything that you've done. Some colleges give students the opportunity to put it into their application, and still others don't even want one. And then it's definitely required for scholarships and different awards that juniors or seniors might be considered for. We can't get samples. I think we're giving out hard copies, and then we share those with the students. Often we assign the activity list to students through Google Classroom, and they just complete it there. It lives there. We share that folder with the secretaries so they can print it out as needed for anything that requires an activity list. And the cool thing about using a Google Doc for your activity list, as opposed to, say, a Word doc, is that you can constantly edit it. So throughout senior year, as your activities change, if you become a captain of a sport or a president of a club, you can update it. And then last but not least, I did mention scholarships, but all of the local scholarships, those applications mandate an activity list. You really have to have one as part of that application process. Another item that college admissions offices want to see are letters of recommendation. These come from teachers and counselors. So for the counselor letter, as you can see on the do column on the left, we want students to meet with us often and complete a questionnaire that we'll assign either later on this spring into the summer or into the fall. And then students are encouraged to ask teachers from major subjects through junior or senior year. Certainly we counselors can help students strategize which teacher to ask. It might depend on what program you're applying to, or if you anticipate having a teacher again. If you think you're taking a class that you know that teacher teaches senior year, that might be a really good match. We really encourage students to ask for letters face-to-face, not just sort of send an email. We want that to be a real personal conversation, and some teachers are going to have their own requirements for students to complete. So that personal conversation is really important. You can consider asking people who know you outside of school, but know that a letter from a coach or an employer, while valuable, does not replace a letter from a teacher or counselor. It's important to know in the don't column that you shouldn't get too many letters. You're generally not allowed to read them, so you can't pick and choose. And you can see that's bullet point 2. Do not assume that the most effective letter comes from the class in which you earned the highest grade, right? A student with a straight A average is probably a go-getter. The material came easily to them. There's not much to say. But a student who may have really struggled at the beginning of the year and overcame that and really showed some perseverance or tenacity, that's a great letter. It really speaks to the student's work ethic, and it shows how students handle adversity. So those can be really, don't shy away from those hard classes that you survived. And then we also remember to thank the teachers. It's really important to understand that the letter really is, it's a little bit of a privilege. And we want this to come from an organic relationship that you already have with a teacher. And I think this might be my last bullet, but the another factor in the admissions process is the college essay. We want you to start writing it over the summer. The majority of colleges are on the Common Application, and they have a series of prompts. We have not received any notice from the Common Application that they're changing the essays. So students are welcome to Google the prompts and see which might ring a bell, which might feel familiar, or get like those writing juices flowing. Some colleges, especially more competitive colleges, want to see that they want to see more writing, so they're going to want an additional essay. And a lot of colleges would like to know why you want to go there, and you should be very specific when you tell them why you want to go there. I mention this too because as you're going on your tour or engaging with the colleges on social media or learning about different programs, you should be taking notes, because they're probably going to ask you at some point, why us? English teachers will assist students with the college essay. It's a personal statement, and it usually matches the prompts. A student can pick a prompt as well. And then we have been offering for a few years now a college application boot camp at BHS, and that always has an essay writing section in addition to help with the applications. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Leary.
Just sharing my screen. Can you all see this? Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you
We
see
can
it?
see it, but it's not, is it presenting something? Yep, we just need you to hit, there you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
so kicking off with applications. So many of you have probably heard of the Common Application, informally known as the Common App, by counselors and students. It is one application that is sent to multiple colleges, so it makes everyone's lives easier. It is made up of the basic application, often supplements depending on the college. So those would be an additional page or two, asking additional questions specific to the college. And then typically a payment, which is a non-refundable application fee. The application will be started in the spring of junior year through our small group meetings that we do with students. So we will help them create their account and get them started. It is through commonapp.org. And it is up to students to continue working on that through senior year when they have the time. Colleges that are not part of the Common App have their own private apps, and those can be found on the individual college websites. So some students may, apply to 7 or 8 schools and only have to do the Common App. Others may have to do a combination sometimes of the Common App plus a private application or two, depending on which schools they apply to. For college admissions options, there are several options. There is regular decision, which often falls from January 1st to March 1st. That means that students have all fall to be working on applications and pulling all of their materials together. Then there are the early options. There is early action, which is a non-binding option, often November 1st, November 15th, even as early as October 15th for some southern schools. For example, UNC is an example of an October 15th deadline. And decisions for that are usually in mid-December to early to mid-January. Early decision, these two often get confused, early action and early decision. Early decision is the binding option. So this comes with a contract that students have to sign along with the parent and the counselor. And it's for students who have a top choice school that they really love, that they know they can afford. It's expected that if they apply and get accepted, that they will attend and they will retract any applications that they've sent out to other schools. Then there is another option that's called rolling admission, where there isn't necessarily one set deadline, where students are reviewed up against a whole pool of applicants. This is applications are reviewed as they're received, and often students get a pretty quick decision within a few weeks. And for that, definitely the earlier, the better. So even though there isn't a set deadline, it is good to get it in early. The end of year tasks that we let juniors know is what they should aim for. These are all tasks that we help them get started on, but it is up to them to carve out time each week to be working on these things. So first, it's to create a list of potential colleges in SCORE. They will complete an activity list, which we will get them started on. As Ms. Diozzi said, it will be an assignment in Google Classroom later this spring. To ask junior teachers for letters of recommendation. To begin a questionnaire to request a counselor letter of recommendation. And then we will help them, as I said, create a Common App account and begin filling out that application. If you're wondering how you can help throughout this process, it is important to let your teen drive the bus and really own this process. It is their future. It's going to be their next 2 years or 4 years, depending on the school. So when it comes to reaching out to colleges, we recommend that the students do the communicating. So whether it's calling admissions, whether it's emailing them, and of course completing tasks as well. It's important that students are the ones to be working on the applications and filling those out. And also to communicate directly with their counselor. So please encourage that. We also recommend discussing restrictions up front. So for example, if going across the country, going to a college on the West Coast is unrealistic, then it's important to be upfront about that. As I believe Miss Minty mentioned this earlier, but we do recommend not limiting choices based on sticker fee. You never know how much aid you will get, and that decision can be made later once you start getting financial aid packages. It is helpful to remind your teen of deadlines for sure, and to encourage college visits, especially if they're struggling to get going on that first college visit. We do recommend trying to limit conversations about college to one time per week. It can become overwhelming when parents and family members are constantly asking them for updates and what their plans are. So we've heard from students and parents that it can be really helpful to designate one time per week where your teen can update you on their progress, and it assures both parties that there is a designated time, and it won't leave you hanging, it won't leave you out of the loop, and they know they won't be asked every single day. We do recommend not creating accounts on behalf of your child as well. It can create some confusion when we meet with students if they, for example, don't know how to log into their Common Application or their College Board account because they did not create the account. So when it comes to students in need of support services, we do recommend as early as possible reaching out to support services at the college level. So as soon as you know which college the student might be attending, it will be important for the student to connect with the support services at their college of choice. Colleges grant academic accommodations on a case-by-case basis, and the most important thing, the most important factor is evaluation results within the past 3 years. So even if there's an IEP or a 504 plan in place, those don't transition smoothly to college. What they care most about is evaluation results within the past 3 years, and they will work with the student to determine appropriate accommodations for the college level. It is important to check each individual college for specific requirements and deadlines. And keep in mind that students applying to the Mass State Universities, if they submit documentation of a disability, then they may be eligible for exemption from standardized tests. For those students interested in NCAA athletic eligibility, which is Divisions 1 and 2 only, it doesn't include Division 3, they will need to register with the NCAA clearinghouse. You can see the website here on the screen. So we recommend that students create a profile as early as possible. And it's important to check the website for requirements. They do have their own requirements where you have to meet a minimum GPA based on core courses. So there's certain courses students have to have taken throughout high school. And they do have to earn a combined SAT or ACT score that matches the core course GPA on the NCAA sliding scale. Only core AP honors and CP 1 classes count for that. So you may have heard of a gap year. A gap year is time intentionally taken after high school and before college to explore an interest through hands-on learning. This can include work, volunteering within the US or abroad, sometimes language immersion, work exchange, outward bound, or what's called semesters. There are lots of programs out there. They do vary widely. Pre-COVID, there were actually some gap year I don't want to say college fair, but similar. So a gap year fair that students could go to check out different programs. It is strongly recommended that a student still apply to college during their senior year and then defer admission if choosing to pursue a gap year experience. And that we recommend that because once you're a year out of high school, you don't have the support of your counselor, and you don't have your teacher access to your teachers to write a current letter of recommendation. So it would make the process a lot easier for the student if they completed the application process in their senior year and then just requested to defer their admission for a year. They wouldn't have to reapply. And I believe that's my last slide.
Thank you, Mrs. Leary. So I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid. Unfortunately, this is not a financial aid night. We do plan on offering something in the spring. Just keep your eyes on the counseling events page. We're working on that as we speak, but I did want to go over some of the basics just to give you some information. When we talk about financial aid, we're not talking about one specific thing. We're talking about a few things. When we hear financial aid, under the umbrella of financial aid are scholarships and grants. And so those are the types of things you, as a student, you really, and as a parent, you want your child to receive the scholarships and grants. These are things you don't have to pay back. It's free money. It's money that's given from state or federal government or directly from the college. You heard a lot about ticket price tonight from the other counselors, and we do encourage you to apply to, whatever colleges students are potentially interested in, and not look at that ticket price. And just again, you're not 100% sure what kind of aid or scholarships or grants you're going to get. You can qualify for different types of loans, and whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized. And you can see some details on the slideshow here. But I think that when you're applying through the financial aid process, you qualify for different types of loans than you would if you were going to take out the equity on your home, something along those lines. I think these loans are specific for educational purposes. And then also through the process of financial aid, students are able to qualify for something called work study. Many parents, I think, are familiar with this, but this is essentially student getting a job right on campus. In that way, students are able to collect a check while they're in school working on the campus. So that's usually set up through and by the school, whatever school the student attends. I guess if you're going to take away something from this piece of the presentation, I would remember these two documents. One is called the FAFSA, and the other is the CSS profile. The FAFSA, I don't know parents that have had older children go through the schools, or even you yourself. Financial aid, it used to always be available in January of senior year. It has changed. It's now available in October. And the FAFSA is a document that stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That is a form that is free for students to fill out. And by filling this out, your income is reviewed along with a few other things, and a number is given to you called an EFC, Estimated Family Contribution. That EFC is basically, that number is essentially saying this is what you as a family can afford per year. And that EFC is then used to distribute financial aid if someone qualifies. FAFSA is state or federal aid as well. That's the source of the funding for the FAFSA, state or federal aid. Next is the CSS profile. This is for private schools predominantly. This is available in fall of senior year as well. It's a similar process in the sense that you need to fill out financial information on a document. However, just having seen the form and talking to parents over the years, they're going to ask for more information. They get, I think, more into the weeds a little bit about your financial background. And what happens here is students will, if qualified, they qualify for something called institutional aid, meaning the college is now providing the funding for the scholarship, grant, loan, whatever the case may be. And then some colleges will have additional opportunities to apply to various scholarships. I'm just thinking BU off the top of my head. I think they have like a presidential scholarship that is separate from either of these applications. So, as you're going through the college research process, one of the things to be aware of is just checking out any kind of scholarship opportunities. In terms of financial aid events, as I said, we're going to try and have one exclusive for Burlington families in the spring. However, MIFA is let's just see if I can click on it real quick. MIFA is a really, really great option for parents to do any kind of research on the financial aid process. They actually have webinars pretty consistently throughout the course of the year. We basically, MIFA is made up of financial aid officers from really around Massachusetts and New England, and they're all working on a voluntary basis through MIFA, and it's just a great resource. We've made a lot of great connections to various colleges and university financial aid folks through MIFA, and parents will call to get questions answered and things like that. So I can't encourage that enough. Again, I just mentioned this previously, but this is where the financial aid comes from, depending on the form, either federal government, state government, colleges and universities, and in some cases, private agencies may be offering a scholarship through a particular college as well. Local scholarships. So parents probably have heard of Adopt a Class. So the scholarship program is a pretty dynamic program. It's not one particular, it's not one committee deciding on all these scholarships. It's actually a grouping of several different civic and fraternal organizations, memorial scholarships, and a few other agencies that are involved. All together, collectively, last year, about $365,000 were distributed to graduating Burlington High School seniors. And in order for students to access and apply for these scholarships, they essentially need to, depending on what scholarship they're looking into, there's different places to go. One being the First Tab Air Scholarship America. We have something called a general scholarship. So Scholarship America, it's very similar in the sense of to Common App, meaning a student goes into Scholarship America, fill out a profile, and then when scholarships become available, usually around March 1st of senior year, all the local scholarships will populate. And as a student, you really, once you've completed the profile, you just click on the scholarships to apply. It makes things a lot easier. The general scholarship is a different application. That is usually it's a hard copy application. This would be for donors that don't use Scholarship America. These would be donors that make the decision, whether it's a family, whether it's a business, but they look at this general scholarship application and kind of make the decision from there and distribute the scholarship. Parents, you've probably heard of Adopt a Class. This is senior year is the time to cash in on Adopt a Class. There's been I'm not sure for the junior class who is the sponsor. Maybe if a parent out there knows, you could put it in the chat. But that sponsor has been following the class of 2023 since kindergarten, and money has been accruing. And students in high school have been working hours, specifically in high school, K through 8, it was parents. So then senior year, student fills out an application and they can literally cash in on the hours they've contributed with Adopt a Class. New students or students that haven't been involved or parents that weren't involved, please don't think you can't be involved. It's not too late. Adopt a Class events are happening periodically throughout the course of the school year. You could give us a call in the counseling office, Mrs. Kavanaugh, or your son or daughter. You can stop by the counseling office and we could provide you more details on that. Again, applications may be posted on SCORE. We actually haven't decided that yet. But either way, wherever we post our applications, we would certainly be letting everyone know. use caution. If someone's going to charge you money to identify scholarships for you, I would just be aware, cognizant of that, and just do your due diligence with that information. There's lots of research databases that can be used. One being SCORE, other websites that you can use to do your own research as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the MCAS that was actually still given to the current junior class. They took it last year as sophomores, and the MCAS offers 2 opportunities for something called a tuition waiver, and that would be for any Mass public college or university, and the tuition price varies depending on the state university. So it usually could equate to a couple grand a year, again, depending on the school. So although it doesn't cover the fees and the room and board, which is usually around $15,000 to $20,000, it does waive the tuition, which again is usually right around $2,000, $1,800, depending on the college. I'm thinking of UMass Amherst right now, but that is a savings. So how do you qualify for these things? There is one particular award called the John and Abigail Adams. This award is for students that took MCAS and scored in the top 25% of the class. And when I say the class, I mean Burlington High School. It's not comparing Burlington to Billerica, Burlington to Lexington. It's just Burlington High School students. Top 25%. You get a letter mailed to you. It's usually in the fall of senior year, so it wouldn't be this year. You get a letter mailed to you at home. And if you're going to one of the Mass public colleges, universities, you take that letter to the financial aid office and you don't have to pay the tuition. Another award given by the state is the Stanley Koplik Certificate of Mastery. This is a little bit different. The Adams is easier because you just get a letter and you're good to go. This requires additional steps. All right. And the first initial qualifier of it is based on your ELA, math, and science MCAS scores. All right. And you have to hit a certain cut score in order to make the initial qualification. And then from there, 2 forms of extra supporting documentation are required. Other things that can be counted towards these 2 forms of supporting documentation would be an AP exam score, outstanding certificate of achievement from a department head at Burlington High School, something within the community, certificate of completion of advanced coursework. It could be a dual enrollment course, the Mass Seal of Biliteracy. So the actual application we mail at home, that we're probably going to be hearing about within the next month or so. So juniors on this presentation, keep in mind, if you did qualify for this, you'd get something in the mail, and that application lists specifically, I think there's even more things that students can do in order to achieve these 2 forms of extra supporting documentation. Unfortunately, you don't know about the Adams until the fall, which is the easier one. It'd be nice if that came out first, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I am going to just quickly hand it over to Miss Rogers. She's going to jump in and pick it up right now. Miss Rogers, I'll keep my slide up if it's easier that way.
That would be great, actually. I know it's just the one, so that would be awesome. Mr. Adebato, thank you.
Yep, I'm just going to mute this.
Sure. All right, so I'm just going to make a brief reappearance to talk about some of the social emotional competencies that obviously come into play during this process. And we know that anxiety and thinking about the future go hand in hand. So the college application process and then waiting for the results is a really natural trigger and stressor for many. So if there's some opportunity here and what can be a stressful and challenging time for students, it's to think about how this can actually serve as a dipstick for us to get a sense of, as students, some of our social emotional capacities. And that's never a bad thing as we are headed from high school into our next chapter. So For example, this can give you, as the high school student, and your parents and guardians, your families, a bit more information about where you stand with some of these skills. So self-regulation, for example, coping skills and strategies that you are aware of and that you remember to practice prior to and during times that are particularly stressful. It is a great opportunity for resilience because you're not going to necessarily get into every single college or the number one college, or maybe you do, and the financial aid package is not something that's reasonable or feasible for you and your family. So it is an opportunity in resilience and having a growth mindset. Risk management, I think for this really, it kind of ties into keeping a read on your levels of stress and when they've reached a place that is unmanageable. The goal is to kind of have a read on this when you're starting to feel like you're getting kind of a little bit beyond your comfort zone with how you manage stress. You want to be thinking about, what are my coping strategies? If I'm not sure about coping strategies, who can I reach out to? Who's in my support network? Self-acceptance, I mean, that's something that is a lifelong journey for really every single human, that we hope begins young, but when we're going through this process, it can certainly hit at our self-esteem, because it is challenging to not necessarily get into everywhere that you've chosen, or even if you've gotten into everywhere that you've chosen, to be thinking about your identity in relation to college in the next chapter. And just want to encourage, to the best of all students' ability and families' ability, to keep an open mindset, to keep a growth mindset, and to practice seeking out help. We all need help in different ways, and it is a huge strength to begin asking for it. So I'm here, your counselors are here, we're all here to help with this process and many other things. Thank you.
Thank you. We did try to time that slide out right after the financial aid section. So hopefully you found that helpful.
Good call.
So we're very close to wrapping up here. Again, we encourage you to throw questions in the chat. Upcoming events to be aware of. This is for parents. Excuse me. We have, we do a breakfast series, and I guess the junior parents, you would have probably had the opportunity for a live breakfast freshman year in the fall. I don't know if anyone attended that, but that was probably one of our last breakfasts live pre-COVID. When I say live, I mean face-to-face. But for this year, our breakfast will continue to be virtual. We hope to have them live and in person next year. Upcoming will be, you heard Miss Minty mention the course selection process. We will explain that to parents as well on Wednesday, March 2nd. And if you can't make it, we will certainly share the slides and the information that we share with everyone that morning with all parents. And then just before the summer, we typically do something called college topics for the summer. And that's more of, again, kind of a quick review of some of the things we talked about tonight. And then we also go over a couple things in looking towards next fall. One thing I do want to mention is we have crammed in so much information within this slideshow. And please know this is not how we're communicating this to the juniors in real time. As you heard from a couple of the counselors, we're meeting with juniors. We hope to meet with them 3 to 5 times, whether it be small group, whether it be one-to-one. We really want to make sure the information is given in shorter, manageable chunks as opposed to all at once. Again, we just want you to have an overview and an understanding of what we're going to be doing this spring. I am going to put in the chat the evaluation of the program, and I'm going to try to do that right now. Hopefully I can do that. Well, if you bear with me, I will get that in the chat. If not, I can certainly email it out. Just check one more time. It doesn't look like it's working. I'm going to try to work on that right now. And then score. This wasn't actually in this chat. On the Facebook chat, I picked up a couple question about score and when parents can get access to it. We do plan to email parents hopefully soon. Students do have access to it. And we do have parent information that we've used from Aspen. So If, as a parent, if you wanted to try to go to score.com and try logging in with whatever email you use in Aspen, you could do that. However, we will be sending that information out hopefully within the next couple of weeks, so you can access and see what SCORE is all about. One other thing I'll mention, and I can't recall if a counselor mentioned it previously, but in terms of a letter of recommendation, counselors certainly write letters of recommendation if students request them. Many colleges require counselor letters of recommendations, and we ask that or give parents the option to fill out a senior parent questionnaire. That would usually be next fall. That's an opportunity for a parent to brag a little bit about their child, let us know some information that we may not already know. And so that's optional, but please keep that in mind as we kind of navigate through the beginning of next fall. And I'm going to stop presenting. And I am going to see if I can find that evaluation, if you bear with me. But if anyone has any questions, me or any of the counselors would be more than willing to answer them. Okay, well, here comes the link. I found it. If everyone's looking in the chat, hopefully I have the settings on correctly so you can access it. Definitely let me know if not. Can the parent maybe give me a thumbs up or okay if that doc is open for you to got it. Okay, that requesting sign in. Okay. So it should be, looks like it's working for a few. Jen, are you able to get in? All right, well, I'm going to hang out for a little bit. I'll stick around to answer any questions. Otherwise, parents, thank you so much. For students that were on here, thank you as well. Hopefully you got kind of a good overview of things. And again, feel free to reach out to us anytime.